Hi, I am Tom Holland, host of The Rest is History, and today I am going to be looking at Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey, and I am doubly excited about this. Firstly, because I am a huge fan of Christopher Nolan's films, but secondly, because The Odyssey is, I think, my favourite story. I have been obsessed with it since I was about 8. It is the primal epic, and if ever there has been a director who is qualified to do justice to Homer's poem, I think it is Christopher Nolan. So I've got the trailer loaded here on the iPad, and I'm going to take it away. So this is a very sinister opening, almost hallucinatory, expressive of death, weapons and armour on a great plain. So I am assuming that this is the plain of Troy, on which the heroes of Greece and Troy have been fighting for 10 years. The Odyssey begins with Troy, a smouldering pile of rubble. Odysseus is hoping to get home. He's about to sail off, so I'm imagining that this is what we're seeing. Troy has been sacked. There's smoke in the background, perhaps rising from the ruined city.
After years of war.
Slight sense of the enigmatic about this. We assume that the guy with the red crest on his helmet is Matt Damon. It sounds like him, so this will be Odysseus kneeling down before a very menacing figure in black. Maybe this is the Anax Andron, the king of men, Agamemnon, who is the commander of the Greeks at the Trojan War. If indeed the previous scene is showing us the dead of the Trojan War after the fall of Troy, then presumably this is Agamemnon. He will go on to have a very unpleasant fate, which is described in the Odyssey, because he ends up being murdered by his own wife. And in due course, Odysseus will meet with his ghost in the land of Hades, the land of the dead. But again, a sense of the enigmatic about this, I think.
No one could stand between my men.
So there we see Odysseus and his men wandering through a forest, gusts of snow, so a sense of maybe a land beyond the Mediterranean. And this is the key to Odysseus' wanderings. This is a man who has spent 10 years at the Trojan War. He wants to get back home as fast as he can, and instead he ends up spending another 10 years before he gets back to his homeland, Ithaca, his wife and his son. And in the course of these wanderings, he is endlessly arriving on islands and discovering that these islands are inhabited by murderous and terrifying creatures and peoples. So I am assuming, this being a high-octane action film, that the people that he's going to meet on this island are not the kind of people that you want to be running into.
And home.
So I mentioned that Odysseus has this yearning to get back home. It's this great theme of nostos, the return home, that powers the Odyssey. And of course, it is one of the great themes of Christopher Nolan's filmmaking. And here we see, I'm guessing, the palace of Odysseus on his homeland of Ithaca. And we see my namesake, Tom Holland, playing Telemachus, Odysseus' son, and Anne Hathaway playing Penelope, Odysseus' queen. Telemachus had been a baby when Odysseus left for Troy. So presumably at this point, we are 20 years on. And this is when, in Homer's epic, the Odyssey, this is what we begin with. We begin not with Odysseus himself, but with Telemachus, who's grown up, never knowing his father, and he doesn't know what to do, because Penelope, his mother, is being hassled by suitors who are saying, Odysseus is dead, you've got to choose one of us. One of us must become king in the place of your absent husband. Penelope doesn't want to do this, and Telemachus certainly doesn't want to see his father replaced. But the poem begins with this huge question, what is Telemachus going to do? And it's one of the kind of the multiple narratives that is spun in Homer's Odyssey. And There's nothing Christopher Nolan enjoys more than a kind of multiple narrative. If you think of Dunkirk, 3 different kind of plots in that. And I'm guessing that this is what he will have done in the Odyssey.
Not even me.
Odysseus there on his ship. It is a ship that is more appropriate to the age of Homer than the age of the purported Trojan War. The Odyssey is woven through with themes and scenes and nightmares that emerge from the age in which Homer is writing the poem. And the age is one in which the Greeks are sailing westwards from the Greek homeland into the Western Mediterranean, and they are starting to plant colonies there. And my feeling about the Odyssey is that the nightmares that Odysseus experiences are a kind of refracted version of the nightmares that were being experienced by those first Greek colonists. And so it's entirely appropriate that we see him in a ship that is conjuring up that age of colonization, the 8th century, the 7th century BC. Okay, so again, I mean, such an eerie, haunting shot. This is clearly the making of the Trojan Horse, the most famous military wheeze in the whole of global mythology, thought up by Odysseus to get around the problem that the Greeks have been fighting the Trojans for 10 years and they can't get into Troy. So if you can't, what you can't do by force, do it by trickery. Odysseus is the cleverest, the smartest, the most cunning of all the Greek heroes, and he comes up with this plan. Why don't we leave a massive great horse, pretend it's an offering to Poseidon, the god of the seas, to kind of get him on board so that when the Greeks sail home, he won't shipwreck us. But actually, it's all a trick. The Greeks haven't set sail. They've gone and hidden behind a nearby island. And the greatest Greek heroes have hidden themselves inside the belly of the Trojan horse. The Trojans, absolute idiots, pull down the walls and drag the horse in. And there the Greek heroes are inside the belly of the Trojan horse, inside Troy at night. And we're told in the Odyssey, we're told actually, this is a story that Telemachus hears in Sparta, which is the home of Menelaus, the husband of Helen and of Helen of Troy herself. Menelaus tells a story about how the Greek heroes were inside the belly of the horse, and Helen, who has been held captive in Troy by the Trojans. But the huge question is, did she go willingly or unwillingly? And this is an episode which seems to imply that she was there willingly, because she comes to where the horse is and she starts calling out in the voices of the Greek heroes' wives, summoning them to join her. And the Greek heroes are so hypnotized by the beauty and the magic of Helen's mimicry and by their yearning for their wives whom they haven't seen for 10 years. And they start thinking, yes, I want to get out of the horse. I want to go and join her. And Menelaus tells Telemachus, we would have given the game away. We would have betrayed ourselves had Odysseus not put his hands over the mouths of the heroes who were about to cry out to Helen. And it's an example of Odysseus's kind of stoicism, his heroism, his ability to meet every crisis. And it's essentially telling Telemachus, you are the son of a great and brilliant hero. Okay, so probably I would guess people who have never read the Odyssey or really don't know very much about it, probably the one adventure that people are most familiar with is that Odysseus turns up on an island where there is no sign of agriculture. It all seems to be very savage and backward, and they find a great cave and they wander into the cave and it's clearly inhabited, and they think, oh, let's wait and see if there's someone friendly and we can do some trading or something. Bad mistake, because the person who owns this cave is a guy called Polyphemus, who is a Cyclops, and a Cyclops is a colossal giant with one eye in his head. And Polyphemus turns out to be unbelievably unfriendly. That's the first trailer. Time for trailer 2.
Tell me what you remember.
Okay, so that is a shipwrecked Odysseus, and Odysseus sets sail from the Trojan War with 12 ships. He ends up with one ship, and then that one ship is destroyed in a storm, and the wreckage is washed up on the island of Calypso. And so I'm assuming that what we're seeing here is a man who has lost his entire complement of ships and men tottering up onto the island of Calypso.
A wife? A son?
So always good to see Tom Holland, Telemachus. I think here he is, he's left Ithaca and he is sailing off to mainland Greece. But I'm guessing that, well, in fact, I know that Helen is in the film, and therefore Menelaus, who is her husband and the brother of Agamemnon, the king of men. I'm guessing this is where Telemachus is heading.
And then what?
And immediately we move on to the Trojan Horse. And I like the way in which it is rearing up. Normally when you have representations of the Trojan Horse, it's on all fours. But here it's kind of vibrant, very vibrant.
We won the war.
The Greeks have poured out of the belly of the horse. The gates of Troy are open. The main body of the Greeks have returned and are presumably flooding into the city. I'm guessing this menacing figure in his black armor is Agamemnon, who we saw earlier. Troy was famously described by Christopher Marlowe in his play Dr. Faustus, the topless towers of Ilium, Ilium being Troy. And there we see the topless towers no longer being topless because they are crumbling to dust.
Help me go home.
The classic Matt Damon line, "Help me go home." And a very impressive beard there. So again, this is the shot, I'm assuming, of Ithaca, and it has the vibe of an acropolis. So acropolis is the kind of the stronghold of a Greek city. So the most famous, of course, is the Acropolis in Athens, on which the Parthenon stands. This is a kind of seems an interesting fusion between that idea, which is bred of classical Greece. So there's definite shades there of the Acropolis in the classical period. But there were great citadels built on the Acropolis in Athens, say in the Mycenaean period, the period in which the Trojan War was set. And the stonework of these palaces, not just in Athens, but in Pylos, capital of Nestor, Mycenae, the most famous, the city of Agamemnon. These were called Cyclopean because the stones that were used to build these palaces were so enormous that the Greeks assumed that only the Cyclopses could have built them. So perhaps there's a kind of echo there of Polyphemus, the Cyclops, who is going to feature in this story. Okay, so here is Robert Pattinson. He is playing Antinous, who is the worst of the suitors. And the suitors are these guys who have piled into Odysseus' palace in Ithaca to press Penelope to marry one of them. And Antinous is the guy who throws his weight around most, kind of slaughtering Odysseus' cattle, sleeping with Odysseus' slave girls, generally being a braggart and a bully. And the person he is particularly a bully towards is obviously my favourite character, Telemachus, played by Tom Holland. Tom Holland, he's not going to put up with this. Tom Hollands they're not going to allow themselves to be bullied. So this, I'm guessing, is the context that inspires Telemachus to go to mainland Greece to talk to Helen and Menelaus about his father and see what he can find out about where he might be.
I want you to choose me.
Oh, brilliant. Here is Anne Hathaway as Penelope, looking absolutely tremendous, very, very regal. And she has in her hand a great bow. And this is the bow owned by her husband. He had not taken it with him to Troy. And the thing about this bow, it's impossible for anyone except a hero to string. So Odysseus can string it, but can the suitors? And Penelope is going to tell the suitors, I will become the wife of whoever can string the bow of Odysseus and fire an arrow through 12 axe heads, and we will find out who ends up passing that test. So here Penelope is in her private rooms with, I'm assuming, Antinous, and she is sitting in front of her loom. And one of the things that the Odyssey celebrates in the marriage between Odysseus and Penelope is the fact that they are perfectly matched. It is a union of minds as well as of bodies. And Penelope is as clever and brave and strong-hearted as Odysseus is. And just as Odysseus loves a wheeze, he's the guy who invented the Trojan Horse, so does Penelope. And Penelope has been telling the suitors, I will marry one of you once I have completed this shroud for Laertes, who is the father of Odysseus. And so she spends all day at her loom weaving and weaving and weaving, and then all night she unpicks it. The suitors are obviously incredibly dumb because she does this for several years until they finally rumble her.
No, he's not.
Yeah, so there's Polyphemus with his one eye. Brilliant theory about why Polyphemus has one eye. So according to Greek tradition, the Cyclops lived on Sicily. Polyphemus's cave was placed on the coastal slopes beneath Mount Etna. And this is a place where prehistoric mastodons had lived, prehistoric kind of elephants. And there's a wonderful theory that perhaps the Greeks discovered their fossils. And of course, where the trunk came, it looks like a single giant eye. And the eye is done very well.
You're pining for a daddy you didn't even know, like some sniveling bastard.
Okay, so again, Antinous bullying Telemachus. It's the only word that will cope. And at the beginning of the Odyssey, Telemachus is yet to man up. And the person who materializes and helps Telemachus kind of to stiffen his backbone, to encourage him to stand up for himself, is the other female protagonist in the Odyssey who loves Odysseus and whom Odysseus loves. And this is not Calypso, but another goddess, the goddess Athena. And Athena is the patron of all those who are incredibly smart. And this is why she loves Odysseus more than any mortal. And it's why she has been keeping an eye both on Odysseus and on what's going on in Ithaca. And she will materialize and speak to Telemachus and say, come on, sort yourself out. You are the son of a great hero. The person playing Athena is Zendaya, with whom Tom Holland, who's playing Telemachus, of course, they know each other very well.
You're a man who needs to control his fate. But you cannot control this.
Oh, the puppy. So I'm imagining that is Odysseus remembering his departure from Ithaca and having to say goodbye to his little puppy who's called Argos. And that gives me massive hope that one of the most touching scenes in the whole, not just of the Odyssey, but the whole of ancient literature will be featuring in this film. And that is when Odysseus gets back to Ithaca and discovers that Argos is just alive. It's going to be a great moment. The Odyssey is often told as simply a story about a man trying to get home and failing. And that obviously is at the heart of what the film is about. But Homer's poem is about much more than that. It is incredibly subtle and sophisticated in terms of the tricks and the games that it plays with time, with narrative, with perspective. And all of these are characteristics of Christopher Nolan's films. And so I guess what I am most interested to see is the way in which Christopher Nolan will deal with these complexities that exist in Homer's poem. I'm imagining that he will not have gone for the simple, obvious narrative of following a guy who has to get home. I'm imagining that he will be making play with all the tricks and complexities and narrative shifts that is contained within Homer's poem. So I've enjoyed watching these previews, but I've got to admit, they're not really enough. I now want to see the whole film. It's out on the 17th of July. I can't wait. And I'll tell you one thing, what I'm particularly excited about is that this has been made for the IMAX. So it's not just going to be a spectacular film, it is going to be a spectacular film in an IMAX cinema. So roll on the 17th of July.